What if you could end your deepest anxieties? Not by getting something new, but just by understanding how your own mind works. Well, that was the life's quest of a man from 2,500 years ago. And his ideas, they're arguably more relevant today than they have ever been.
So let's just dive right into this. This wasn't some quest for more power or for divine favor. No, this was an investigation, an epic journey into the wilderness of the human mind, and it was undertaken by a prince who dared to ask, why do we suffer, and is there a way out? Our story, it doesn't begin with a wise sage meditating under a tree. It starts with a prince living a life that was deliberately, almost artificially scrubbed clean of any and all hardship. For the first 29 years of his life, this man, Siddhartha Gautama, he knew nothing but absolute comfort. He was born around 563 BCE, and his father, the king, was determined to shield him from the harsh realities of the world. The hope was that he'd become a great ruler, not a spiritual teacher. But that kind of protection, it just can't last forever, can it? On a chariot ride outside the palace walls, Siddhartha saw what we now call the four sights. He saw an old man, a sick man, and a corpse, all for the very first time. And the shock, it was profound. He suddenly realized that no amount of wealth or power could protect him from these universal truths of existence. His entire reality just shattered. And this realization, this complete upending of his world, it led to one of the most famous decisions in all of spiritual history, the Great Departure. In the middle of the night, he just left. He traded his royal robes for a simple cloth, his palace for the open forest. He literally walked away from his wife, his newborn son, and his destiny as a king. And make no mistake, this wasn't just a career change. It was a total renunciation of his entire identity, all for this one monumental goal, to find the cause of suffering and a way to end it for everyone. His search for an answer would take 6 long years. It was a journey that pushed him from one extreme to the other, to the very brink of death and back again. He'd already tried the first path, right? The life of total self-indulgence. He had every pleasure imaginable at his fingertips back in the palace, but all it left him with was this deep sense of dissatisfaction, this nagging feeling that something fundamental was missing. So, naturally, he swung to the complete other extreme. For 6 years, he practiced severe asceticism. He denied his body food, comfort, pushed himself to the absolute limit. He figured if he could punish the body, maybe he could liberate the spirit. But that path, it also failed. It just left him emaciated and honestly no closer to an answer. Near death from starvation, he accepted a simple bowl of rice from a village girl, and in that moment he had this profound insight. The path to liberation wasn't about extremes at all, it was about balance. This became known as the middle way, a path of moderation, of clarity and discipline that avoids both hedonism and self-denial. So with this newfound clarity, he sat down beneath a Bodhi tree in a place we now call Bodh Gaya, and he made a vow. He would not get up from that spot until he had uncovered the ultimate truth about reality and suffering, even if it killed him. What happened next wasn't some divine revelation from a god. It was a deep personal awakening, an insight into the very nature of the mind itself, something that's available to anyone who is willing to look. For 49 days and nights, he sat, battling his own mind. His fears, his desires, his attachments, all of it personified in his mind as this tempter figure called Mara. And after this immense internal struggle, he broke through. He awakened. He became the Buddha, which simply means the awakened one. So what was this great insight? Well, it's all summarized in the 4 noble truths. First, life inevitably involves dissatisfaction and suffering. Second, this suffering is caused by our constant craving and attachment to things. But here's the good news, the third truth, an end to the suffering is actually possible. And fourth, there's a practical guide to get there, known as the Noble Eightfold Path, a set of guidelines for ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. Let's just zoom in on that first truth for a second. The original word is dukkha. And yeah, it's often translated as suffering, but it's so much broader than that. It's that background hum of dissatisfaction, right? That feeling that things aren't quite right, the anxiety that comes from living in a world that is constantly changing when we desperately just want it to stand still.
The Buddha argued that the deepest root of this dukkha comes from a really fundamental misunderstanding. See, we cling desperately to this idea of a solid, permanent, independent self, or I. But he said, this self, it's an illusion.
He illustrated this brilliantly with the chariot analogy. Think about it. A chariot isn't one single thing, right? It's a collection of parts, wheels, an axle, a frame. You take the parts away and the chariot disappears. Well, the Buddha said our self is just like that. It's a convenient label for a constantly shifting bundle of thoughts, feelings, memories, and sensations. There's no permanent you sitting in the driver's seat. Our suffering comes from trying to protect and please this fictional CEO of Me, Inc. But this profound insight, it wasn't something Siddhartha just kept to himself. Having finally found the answer, he decided he had to spend the rest of his life teaching it. And for the next 45 years, he walked across India, sharing what he had learned. And this wasn't a religion based on a god. It was a pragmatic, almost psychological system for alleviating human distress.
And his message was radically inclusive for its time. He taught that the path to awakening wasn't reserved for some special few. No, it was an innate potential within every single person, regardless of their social standing or where they came from. After he passed away around the age of 80, his teachings, the Dharma, they spread. They traveled along the Silk Road, they crossed the seas, adapting to different cultures, and evolving into the diverse traditions we see today, from Sri Lanka to Japan to Tibet. But listen, this isn't just ancient history. Fast forward 2,500 years, and these ideas are popping up and resonating in some very unexpected places. Remarkably, modern science is actually starting to catch up to the Buddha. For centuries, Buddhist ideas on impermanence and mindfulness were matters of faith and practice. But now, they're finding clear echoes in neuroscience labs. I mean, the modern concept of neuroplasticity, this incredible discovery that our brain can literally rewire itself based on our thoughts and experiences, that's scientific validation of what the Buddha taught all along. We can intentionally train our minds. Practices like mindfulness, they aren't just relaxation techniques. They are forms of attention training that can literally reshape our neural circuits and fundamentally change how we experience the world. And all of this leaves us with a final, really powerful question. The Buddha's life was a testament to the idea that personal transformation is possible. Modern neuroscience now confirms that the very hardware of our brain is malleable. So if we accept that our minds can be trained and our brains can be changed, the real question isn't if we can change, it's what are we training ourselves to become?